Welcome to How Preschool Teachers Do It.
This is Alison Kentos. I am an early childhood educator.
And this is Cindy Tarabush. I am an early childhood consultant.
This podcast is for parents and early childhood professionals.
Let our experience and research-based knowledge become your guide. Hi, preschool peeps.
Hey, peeps.
We're here today to, it's going to be like we're going to be having a therapy session for me.
I love when they're therapy sessions. Therapy for all.
Maybe. I don't know. I'm hoping,
but definitely for Cindy.
Yeah. You know, I was telling Alison about something that happened to me, and we started to just talk about it. And I said, there's a really great podcast episode in this because this relates back to our early childhoods and the things that we were taught. You can tell by the title that we're going to be talking about nonsense that we were raised with. You may be wondering what nonsense. So I'm just going to tell you the story that happened to me, and maybe you'll relate to it.
Yeah.
There was something that I was going to attend online. And I was fully on board with attending. And then I started to get messages that the scope of it was changing. And I kind of didn't want to attend, but I felt obligated to attend. And I want to get everybody to keep in mind that this is a wholly voluntary thing. There is no obligation at all for me to attend this thing. But instead of just thinking, well, I don't really want to do that, so I'm not going to do it. In my head, I start to do this whole, I'll go, but I won't say anything. Maybe I'll be off camera part of the time. I can claim that my internet went out. If I don't like it, I'll just jump off. What am I doing?
What are you doing? Just say no. Just say no. Remember Nancy Reagan? Didn't Nancy Reagan do that phrase? Just say no back in the 80s. Yeah,
that's her,
we're
right?
going. That was her with the drugs, though. But we're gonna do that with social obligations, because you could just say no to that. You could have just said no. Instead of stressing yourself out, you could just be like, you know what, this isn't for me, I'm going to pass.
But you see, Alison, all of us, I think, in our generations were raised with some nonsense. And there's so
true.
You may be wondering how this personal therapy session relates back to the mission of this podcast. So let me do that for you.
Yeah.
The theorist, Erik Erikson, who taught us different psychosocial stages of development, taught us about a stage that children at approximately 3, 4, 5 years old go through, and it's called initiative versus guilt.
We were clearly loaded with the guilt, though.
So bad. So this is the age at which children begin to independently decide things, create things, make decisions. And depending on how we treat their initiative to do that, it can resolve well or not. So the struggle, Erikson always teaches us that at every age, you go through a struggle of two polar opposites, and it needs to resolve positively. And the polar opposites at that age are initiative versus guilt. Pretty much didn't resolve well for me, because I very often,
well for any of us at our ages. Yeah.
Honestly, I just don't think that we did that well in prior generations. To say to kids, there are certain decisions that you yourself can make without any guilt. There are other decisions where you need to consider the feelings of everybody around you, and is everybody going to be safe? But there are other decisions that are totally yours. And for me, I don't think those other decisions that were totally yours were clearly defined by any adults in my life, educational, family, anybody.
Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate. Right? I mean, I don't feel like, I don't really remember making decisions when I was a kid. It was, I don't remember that, other than like, do I want to play this toy or that toy? Like, everything just felt like an obligation that I had to go to and I had to do.
That's really valid. There were a lot of, when I think back, there were a lot of things that were optional that were called obligations.
Yeah. Right. I don't remember there being this option to say no to any of this stuff. And now I feel like as an adult, I just feel like, okay, I have to do that. I have to do that. I have no choice. And even though it might make me feel horrible to go do this, it'd be like, but the other people are going to feel so sad. And now I have this, like, I'm not responsible for other people's emotions to how I decide this. Like, I decide, but that's the therapy thing. You know, it was like, you're not responsible for other people's emotions based on your decision. You make your decision based on you and your emotions, and how other people react to that is how they react. But that's not your responsibility to say yes to something and now you're hurt just so that person doesn't get upset. But I don't remember that being taught to me until last year.
Yeah, but I think there's some level with young children where we have to teach them kindness, and we do have to have them think about other people's feelings in certain situations. But I don't know that we're good at picking out which situations, when I'm working with a young child, in which situations do I have to have that child sit down and think about the feelings of other people, and in which situations does that child just completely have autonomy over their own decisions? I think you're right. I don't think that was separated for us. I remember a childhood just filled with obligations, like we're going to do this because we're supposed to, or we have to, or that's what family, that's what family does. That's what family does. That's what says who.
Right. Right.
I think it, especially at this time of year, maybe people can relate to that, as I'm sure that we have some listeners relate, facing or having faced in this holiday season from Thanksgiving through December, that whole obligation to go somewhere you may not actually even want to go.
This personally happened to me for Thanksgiving. So like, I, every single year for Thanksgiving, went to a family event that I honestly didn't always particularly enjoy. Not every year was bad, but there were some years that were bad. And it turned out that it made Thanksgiving my least favorite holiday. Okay. And I think because I was forcing myself to go to these events that I didn't really want to go to. And I was like, whatever, just get it over with. It's just a day, whatever. But this year I was like, you know what? I'm not going to do that. My friend invited me. I went to my friends, and I realized I don't have to go necessarily to the family obligation event. And guess what? Nobody cared. Nobody cared. Everybody was like, hey, you had a great day. So, yeah, I had it. My family is not mad at me. My family is not upset with me. They wished I was there, of course, but they still had a wonderful holiday. I had a wonderful holiday. It's just, I was like, wow. Like, so for years I was saying yes to an event that, because I thought everybody would be just so mad, or so there would be a big fallout from it. And nothing happened. There was no fallout. Nobody's mad. It just, I realized I don't have to say yes. But I think the pandemic kind of taught me that too. Like, you don't
100%.
have to. Yeah, because we were saying no to a lot of things that we normally would have said no. And I don't know. I think if the pandemic didn't happen, I maybe still would be going to these obligatory. Let me help you. Obligatory. Yeah, events, and now you feel like I can always just not go, and it's okay.
Every situation, I think, has something we can learn from it. And the COVID-19 pandemic being as just not great as it is, right. There are still things we can learn. One of the things that I also learned was that actually sometimes less is more, and sometimes I can say no. And there were things that I said no to that I would have never said no to in the past, and realized I really enjoyed that no.
Yes.
We need to think about, and I wish I had a ready solution for this, but I don't. We need to think about, when we're working with young children or we're raising young children, teaching them the difference between a choice and an obligation, and really deciding, is this the moment at which I need this child to think about the emotions of other people, Or is this a
Or-
moment where this child can just make this decision and actually the other people aren't going to care? It's funny that you brought that up. I was talking with a group where I was doing a training the other day and talking with a group, and I don't recall the exact conversation, but I remember saying to them, sometimes we assume other people's emotions, including children's emotions.
Yeah.
And we're not right, because they were talking about something about the children would be upset. And I said, no, you're thinking the children would be upset if you didn't do that thing. But we don't know that the children would even care. And I think it's the same thing. I think we can sit kids down and say, if you make that decision, would everyone be safe? I would always ask, would everybody be safe? And I think it's okay to say to young children, let's think about if anybody might get upset and what we can say to them to help them feel better. But it doesn't mean they can't make that other decision.
Right. They can, I think that's valid too. Like, because my whole life is me saying yes to things simply because I was afraid other people would get upset. And I think we need to teach them, like, okay, let's think, would anybody get upset over this? And if your decision is still, no, you don't want to do this, how could you make that person feel better when they're upset?
I think there's a whole other element too. Would that person be upset, and why, and how much guilt am I going to carry? Right. So it's highly possible that this thing I decided not to do, people are like, okay, I guess she couldn't make it, but I'm going to walk around feeling ill at ease about it. Right.
There's that. Yeah.
It's really, it's quite a thing. Here's another one. Again, this is my personal therapy session. I was telling Alison last week, I had a day when I had less work, which is really highly unusual for me. It needs to become more common on my calendar.
But
I had a day. Yeah, thanks, Alison. I had a day when I had far less work and I could take the afternoon off and just sit and do nothing. And like sit and maybe watch TV or do my jigsaw puzzle or go out somewhere. I really didn't need to be sitting at this desk doing work. And I said to Alison, we were texting about something and I said, so I didn't have as much work today. And that felt really weird to me. I didn't like that feeling. What is that about? But I can like tell you.
And I honestly was like flabbergasted because I was like, yeah, I don't feel like that. Like ever.
It didn't feel good to me. It didn't feel good. And yes, I love the work that I do, but I also know that I need to purposely do it a little less because mental health matters too, and time off matters too. You have to recharge your batteries. I know all that, but I can tell you one place that comes from, the nonsense that you learn when you're a kid. One place that comes from when I was a child, I was raised by a dad who went to work with pneumonia.
Aha.
There it is.
There it is. Yeah. And I mean, my dad was kind of the same way. He went to work no matter what, and he would not tell people if he was sick. And he rarely went to the doctor because the doctor probably said, hey, you know what? You can't work for a week. He broke his ankle. He still went to work. It was like, okay.
It was generational. In that generation.
That's what you did. Yeah.
I'm not sure what they learned from their parents that made them that way, but that's what they did. They went, many of them went no matter what, and they went sick and they didn't go to doctors and they went hurt and they did things that were not good for them. And they didn't take, time for themselves or personal time. Vacation was 1 week a year. That was it. We now know how unhealthy that is. And that's still the case for many people. And it is part of the nonsense we were taught, because now we're going to go to another theorist. Albert Bandura taught us the power of modeling, that you can say to me, you should take mental health breaks from what you're doing. You should take time off. You have the ability to do that. If you're fortunate and have the ability to do that, you should do that. But if you yourself went to work with a broken ankle and pneumonia, then I'm not going to do that.
Well, and also because for so many generations that this is the way the workplace has been. Now, if you become a person who's like, you know what, I'm going to take the day off because I need a mental health day, your job is now at risk at some of these workplaces because they're like, oh, we'll just hire somebody who will do all the work. You know what I mean? So
Right.
now you're afraid. You get into like, and that's because I think the workplace has it. I mean, COVID kind of changed that a little bit, but the workplace hasn't changed because they're used to these workers who used to just work no matter what.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
And now the current generation is like, yeah, no, hold up a minute. You know what I mean? Like, that's not the way it should be. And it shouldn't be that way. You should be able to take a day off if you need mental health, because then you'll come back to work the next day and be like, okay, now I'm refreshed. But if you keep getting me going here, I'm going to be burnt out and stressed.
You know,
Like,
I've heard people say these millennials don't have the same work ethic. And to that, I say good for them.
Good.
Good for them.
Yeah.
Good for you all, millennials, because it wasn't healthy what we were taught to do.
It wasn't healthy.
And we knew it. You know what? Here's the thing. These theories aren't brand spanking new. Erikson his theories were very big in the 1960s. I was being raised after that.
Yep.
It's just, there are things that I think, again, passed from generation to generation, and we didn't give it a lot of thought, but we have to. And I applaud the millennials for saying, I am not going to work myself into a toe tag here.
Death.
Right?
Yeah. I'm not going
to
work
take
myself
my time
to death for, I'm going to take my time. You know, I need a livable wage. That's another thing. Thank you. You know, because why are you busting your butt to barely make your rent? Like, why? I totally understand the argument, you know, like, so it's a job. Honestly, it's a job. It's not worth your life. It's a job.
You know, we talk so much about the importance of mental health and getting away from the stigma about people seeking help for mental health, especially these days, and making sure that children don't grow up with that stigma. And we might say things to them like, if you need help, you go get it, or it's really important for you to take breaks or mental health breaks, or, you know, there's a difference between a choice and an obligation. But unless we live that in front of them,
unless they're seeing it happen,
right, it's not going to happen. And I'm going to add that in front of young children, if I'm saying things like, these millennials don't have the same work ethic and that's no good, well, then what it's telling them is what these brave young people have done by standing up and saying, I'm not working myself to death like that, then we're negating that lesson that people could actually take. You know, these young children could actually take that notion in the next generation and build upon it. So the millennials are saying, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to work myself to death like that. But they're still trying to survive in an environment where it exists.
Yeah.
By the time these children grow up, the environment could change around the needs of people if we would just let them value that.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know? All that being said, I still feel a little weird about not going to that thing, and I'm not sure how I will be on my next light work. I have a break coming up, and I'm like so looking forward to this break, and I really hope I don't have that feeling where it's weird to not be working. That's not healthy. Part of it is because of I think the sheer amount of work that was being done over the past year and a half was incredible, and I'm so grateful for it. It's not that I'm not grateful for it. But I think, especially in the beginning, I didn't know when to put the brakes on, and then the speeding car just went out of control. And now
it's out of control.
Now it's out of control. Now it has been time for me to take days like that and say, okay, I need to put the brakes on this car. It can't keep speeding out of control like this. We're in a year now.
Yeah.
We've talked about it in the podcast. We're in a year now where we need to figure out how to live with this thing that we all have to live with in our society. So I'm figuring out how to live with it, but it's the most unsettling feeling. And I really believe that goes back to my early childhood. So if sharing my personal inability to feel good about these sorts of decisions in my life helps anyone think about your interactions and your modeling for young children, then I'm happy to offer it on this podcast.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what we're here for.
I guess.
I guess so.
You know, we're here to help people hopefully teach and raise children based on what we know now, and in maybe higher quality ways than we were, or ways that are better for their social emotional development and their learning. And I think this is a chunk of it. The guilt that adults walk around with for no reason at all is like tiny bit of incredible.
Well, I also feel like there's a guilt, like if you are a parent out there, that you're like, oh, well, COVID did this a lot. Oh, well, he didn't get to go see Santa, or he didn't get to do this for the holiday, or not that for the holiday, and they're going to miss out on this. And you feel all this guilt. And I'm like, no, it's okay. Times are different. Like you can't, for some things, you can't physically do that anymore because of COVID. And for other things, it's like, your child might not have even missed that. Like they'll grow up and it'll be different for them, and you'll forge new traditions and new things to do. And that's okay too. But to carry that load on you too is like not good either. Like it's like,
and I have to tell you, I'm thinking about that story you told about doing different things for holidays. I'm going to tell you what, literally everyone I know who has done something like that or said, I'm going to spend it with the family I choose, not the family I was born into or whatever, they don't regret it.
Yeah. I'm there. That's where I'm at.
They don't regret it. So then what are we doing? And why?
What are we doing?
We were taught guilt. That's what we were taught. It's not even that we were taught obligation. We were taught guilt.
Yeah. And I feel like we should be always surrounding ourselves with people who are supportive and kind and value you as a person. And it doesn't matter who that is. It could be your family. For some people, that's their family. For some people, it's not. And you shouldn't feel forced to put yourself into a situation where you're with people that don't value you as a person or support you or are kind. Like you shouldn't be hanging out with toxic people just because they're your brother, your sister, your mom, your dad, your grandma, your grandpa.
But again, like how many generations was that modeled for us?
I know
this is an obligation. There's no choice. We were also taught, I mean, I don't know about you, but I mean, I think many of us were taught that if you do something and somebody doesn't show up, that you have to be insulted by that.
Oh yeah.
Right. If someone doesn't
like
respond
big insult
to your invitation with a yes, then you must be insulted by that. And that's not the case either.
Yeah.
People have reasons for doing what they do. You don't control other people, and people have reasons for behaving the way they do and doing what they do. And really, I think we were taught to give that way too much thought.
Mm-hmm.
You can live in my head or not, and that should be my choice. This is all the nonsense and the things that I think that we can do better with these kids, where we could say to them, well, if somebody does something that's a little disappointing to you, maybe, well, that's their choice and they have their reasons and we don't know their reasons. So we're just going to carry on. Not everything is meant to hurt you, right?
Not everything is a personal attack.
Right. Yeah. Don't we try to teach younger people things like, not everything is personal, and when people behave the way they behave, that's about them, not you. That's about you. Right. Mm-hmm. We tell this to teenagers, even that's about them, not you. Don't take that personally. But I don't think we model it well.
At least for me, I don't think I model it at all. Because but I'm getting better. I am getting better because I realized I was taking everything very personally, and I'm now way better than I was about that, that took me, look how old I am. I'm an adult and I'm just learning that now, but that's because I didn't learn it when I was a kid, so and now it's hard to get out of that because it's been years upon years upon years of thinking like that. It's harder to get out. If we start earlier with the kids at their age, then they won't struggle like I do half the time.
I feel like as a teacher, right? I keep thinking in the role of a teacher, when a child is making a behavioral decision and we say to that child, would this be safe for everybody? Would everybody be okay with that? Emotional safety is part of it. And again, I don't really have the full answer for this. Maybe some of our preschool peeps do, and they can let us know. But I think that there has to be this fine line between feel guilty about how everybody else is going to feel, or let's present this in a way where people understand why you made this decision. Or let's present this in a way where people will understand and won't get so upset, you know?
Yeah.
I think we do need to teach young children to care about other people's feelings. And it's really the communication and the approach that preserves your feelings, not as much, I think, not as much your action. I think if we teach young children how to say things in a way that's not hurtful, how to act upon their decisions in a way that is not hurtful, then you eliminate that whole the other person gets hurt. But I think this is a much deeper topic.
Well,
I think
also,
we don't even know how to
like
do it because it wasn't done with us.
It wasn't done. And I also feel like if you're honest about it too, like I was very, this is what's really weird, because then you get other people who still are feeling the guilt, you know, at least for my family thing, when I said no to Thanksgiving, I was honest with one person in my family who I told why I wasn't going. That person then lied to the other people about why I didn't go. You know, so then it's like, I feel like just be honest. I'm like, because now for the next event, when I do see that person, I'm going to tell the truth. You know what I mean? Like, because I always feel like, just be honest about how you're feeling. I did not go for this reason. And here's why, you know, and then you can have a discussion, you know, and then the person isn't feeling hurt because you were honest with them and you were able to discuss it in a meaningful manner, instead of lying and making excuses. I feel like we're always making excuses and we feel like we have to have this grand excuse for the reason why we didn't go. It's like, no, I just didn't want to go, you know?
I feel like we can take young children and teach them when they say something because they're angry at somebody and they say something like, you can't come to my birthday party. I think that we should take them and teach them about kindness and say to them, when you are mad at somebody, you need to just say, I'm mad at you. I didn't like that you did that, instead of saying hurtful things like, you can't come to my birthday party, which, you know, I like to point out to 3-year-olds isn't even their own decision. That's their family's decision. So I think, you know, when we say to children who say hurtful things and do hurtful things, when we say to them, instead of saying that, say this, because it's, you know, instead of saying, I don't like you, you smell funny, or whatever excuse they make for not playing with somebody, right? They make excuses because they've seen adults do that. So instead of making excuses for why you don't want to play with somebody and hurting their feelings, instead look at them. We need to teach children to look at them and say, no, thank you. I don't feel like playing right now, which is like me in this situation today. Like, no, thank you. I don't feel like playing right now. I'm not getting on the Zoom. Right?
And that would have been okay. And everybody would have went on and the event would have still happened without you. Nobody would have been any, and it would have been fine. Like nobody would have been like, oh man. Like, I also think like, if you are in that situation and you see a child who says something like, you're not coming to my birthday party, or you stink, or whatever it is, to later on teach them, but like, you said that because you were angry. Right. Let's go over to the person that you said that to and say, sorry, I said that because I was angry. Here's why I was angry, you know?
Right. Just a simple, I was mad, you took my blah.
You took my blah.
Because the poor other kid doesn't even know what went wrong half the time.
No, half the time they don't. Yeah.
So, okay, I'm glad we worked this out. It's not that we don't want kids to care about other people's feelings. It's that we need to teach them to tell the truth. Yes. And we need to teach them to say things in a way that are honest and truthful and are not hurtful, but at the same time, they have the right to say, no, thank you. I don't want to play with you right now.
Yeah.
All right. Somebody should have taught me that as a kid. That's all I'm saying. Somebody should have taught me to say, I don't want to be on your Zoom right now.
I know. Well, I also feel like because of the Zoom, everybody's like, oh, it's just so easy for everybody to pop on. There's no excuses anymore. It's like, no, there's still I don't feel like doing this. Okay. Like just because I don't have to physically get in the car and get dressed does not mean I still want to go. Like, we're still allowed to say no, even though in the world is Zoom. Thank you.
So I hope all of the preschool peeps ponder this in your role as either a family member or a professional in the world of early education, or both. How can we better model that some things are not an obligation? You can make that decision. You present it in a way that is just, you know, no, thank you. Don't want to do that. And and we all move on with our lives. And how do we model for children and teach children that it's okay to take mental health breaks in classrooms too, by the way. In classrooms too, what we need to sometimes say to kids is, you know what? We're just going to do a whole bunch of fun things today because we need a break. That's okay, folks, to take a day with young children and say, we're just going to do a whole bunch of fun today because we all need a break.
We need a break. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Everybody go ponder that. Maybe it'll help you to set some goals for 2022.
Yeah.
And that's the end of today's Cindy therapy session. So we're going to go, preschool peeps. I don't know. Anytime I can use my life.
Yeah.
We're going to go, and we're going to catch you next time on the podcast.
Bye, peeps.
Bye.